Os, welcome back to the Gentleman's Dojo podcast. It's your host, your boy, Joshua Munoz, and I'm excited because today is a solo podcast and it's going to be a very important podcast, probably one of the most important podcast episodes I ever do, just because we're going to be going over the concept of embodying a white belt mentality. And I think this is one of the most overlooked, however, most simplest concept that we can embody, because I think it's important for us to not only have a white belt mentality when things get rough or tough, but how do we have a learning mentality in all aspects of life, right? And that I'm gonna dive right into it. Today is gonna be short and sweet, but it's gonna be one that you're gonna want to repeat. And I say that because I think it's the foundation and the beginning of anyone's journey in life. And I think these concepts should be taught in school at an early age. And these are concepts that I used to teach to my karate students back in the day when I was teaching karate. And that is the white belt mentality. So a white belt mentality, it obviously draws from a martial arts concept of being a beginner, right? I think everyone wants to be a black belt, but no one wants to be a white belt, right? So I'm what I mean by that is a lot of times when we start something new or we're a beginner or something, it could be easily you can easily get discouraged, and I think it's important for us to really embody just a beginner mindset, right? So I think part of being a white belt, let's talk about martial arts terms, right? Since it's the martial arts concept, when you're a white belt, right, and it's your first class, there's a humble and open mindset that comes along with it, right? Where I can speak from my experience in martial arts. When I first started as a white belt, I was just intimidated by the other students because a lot of them had a ton of confidence. And let me give you some context. When I started martial arts, I started taking karate when I was 19 years old, right? So I didn't take karate as a kid, but when I was a young adult and I started taking martial arts, I was really blown away at the other students and there's just their confidence, and being new in the dojos, like, you're anxious a little bit, not sure how you're gonna do in the class. I remember being afraid to throw aya because it was just like it felt weird. It was new, right? So I think obviously in that first class, it was so new that I was just embracing everything I was learning. Even my belt, I didn't even know how to tie my belt. I had to follow like a sheet to actually learn how to tie my belt. Just the mannerisms in class and the things we do and the drills we do and the forms and the kicks and the punches. I mean, this is all brand new, right? So being a white belt, I obviously came in there embracing that fact that I'm going to learn and grow, right? I didn't step into my first karate class thinking, you know what, I can do a jump, spin, and back kick. And I think sometimes in life, I think we tend to forget that, whether if it's starting a new relationship, starting a new career, starting or even trying to make a relationship better or trying to make a career better. I think it's easy for us to get sidetracked by looking at, this is my goal and what I want to become. But then we forget, all experts and masters started as a beginner, and this is really what I want to get through today in this podcast episode is that this white belt mentality, if you can embody it in all areas of your life, is going to change your life completely because you're focused on learning over focusing on perfection. And I think anytime we start something, it's easy to get caught up on perfection. And I think, especially this day and age with Instagram, social media, I mean, it looks like everybody knows what they're doing, right? And the reality is, the majority of people don't know what they're doing, and that's okay, right? We're not, I think we're here to experience and learn, and that brings me to, one of my first principles when it comes to embodying a white belt mentality is the power of curiosity, right? I think it's important in our embodiment of being a white belt is to have a learning mentality and just coming from a place of curiosity, right? I think it's important, now being a father and having my little 5-month-old baby, every day for him is curious, right? He's just curious about what do things do. And now he's at a specific stage where he's curious about everything, and how his curiosity is he puts it in his mouth, right? So he'll grab something, puts it in his mouth. He's like, can I put this in my mouth? Can I put that in my mouth? Can I put that in my mouth? But the point of having the open curiosity is just like, he doesn't wake up and go to sleep and say, well, I had a bad day because whatever, because I didn't master my day. I didn't hit all my goals for the day, right? He's just, with the pure curiosity, he's just living out in the day by day. And I think we lose this sense of curiosity for a couple of reasons. I think one, the programming definitely pushes us to follow and to not question anything. And I think two, I think is just because of the program and society and kind of we kind of picked this up, not I kind of picked this up just because it's something that we pick up from others, but it's the routine, right? The constantly being in routine that puts us in the place of being stagnant and kind of gets you to be a little bit more of like a zombie, right? It's like you wake up, you do this, you do that, you do this, but you don't really question anything. And I think it's powerful when we're able to become curious about everything. And for me, a couple of the questions I'm always curious about is like, how can I improve the quality of my life at the moment? If I'm curious about like, hey, if I was able to be in a very powerful relationship, what does that look like? Or if I'm curious to be like, you know what? If I do this routine, is this better than the other routine? Right? It's just focused on just play more than just focusing in on uh judging everything or being in routine. So I think it's super powerful for us to start becoming more curious. And I question everything. I mean, I question what brought us here. What are we doing here on earth? Right? If you want to get deep real quick. Or if it's like, what is my purpose here? Being curious of like, what, how can I create a career that I love, spend time with the people I love, and do it in a space that never gets out of alignment for myself, right? So that's a question, curiosity, right? That's what I mean. As us adults, we gotta start becoming, we gotta start asking more questions and becoming more curious about our setups. Like that's all all I've done in the past decade has just been asking myself, like, wait a minute, how would my life look like if I did follow through on the things I want to follow through on? Or how would my life look like if I followed through on what felt right in my stomach, my gut, my intuition, or in my heart, right? It's like we have this tendency of like, I think we're so used to doing the opposite, like not following our hearts, not following our guts, and it kind of doesn't lead us the right way. So become curious about it, like, why am I not following my heart, right? Or if I'm not living out my dreams, why am I not living out my dreams? Or if I don't have an ideal relationship, or if I don't have an ideal, whatever it is, right? Ask yourself, why don't you? And what could you do to get there? Right. And the power of curiosity is beautiful, especially for us men, because I don't think us men even focus on asking ourselves any question. What we're really good at doing is disassociating and avoiding things. And I think it's powerful for us to start becoming curious, not only in the things we want to achieve and things we want to do to plan the future out. I think we should always be also become curious about our upbringing and how we were raised, and how did that affect how we're currently living now, right? Like, was there a heartbreak that I went through that I haven't got a chance to really go work through yet fully? Is that why I'm not really fully open and full of love now? Maybe that's not why. Maybe that's why I'm hesitating to get into a relationship, right? Or the curiosity of like, maybe I lived my life average, or this is my personal experience. I lived my life so average throughout my whole life why was that? Why did I do that? Why did I not have confidence in high school? Why didn't I not have, high self-esteem in middle school? And I think it's important for us to start asking ourselves and having this curiosity, because the curiosity is coming from a place of how can I learn? Right. And I think it's important to become curious of the past so we can learn from it. Also become curious of the present moment so you can experience it. And I think we should become curious of like the future, what we want to create. And it's like, we lose this sense of curiosity as we become, go into the schooling systems and become a teenager, and then our focuses change. And then after, you go into college, and then you go into career, then you go into relationship, or what is it, whatever you do. But sometimes we just follow the line instead of being curious of like, why am I following the line? That's kind of what led me to entrepreneurship, and that's what led me to drop out of college to teach karate. I was just curious of like, wait a minute, do I even have to go to school? And I started reading books. I started going on podcasts, and this is back in 2010, before podcasts and all these books were, more mainstream and everyone loved to do it. So it was really different, right? And I was just curious about it. And I was like, what if, I'm just curious about it. And then same with me moving to Arizona. It was kind of like, I'm curious, like, wait, if I did live somewhere else, does that help out my mood, or would I perform better? And the pure curiosity of it made me say, you know what, let me go visit, and then fell in love with it. And here I am. Right. So it's like, I think it's important for us to become curious of our past, present, and what we want to create in the future. And I think that's an important concept of embodying the white belt mentality, is just the power of curiosity. The second concept is, or just kind of the thought process behind embodying the white belt mentality, is it helps us overcome fear. And the reason why having a white belt mentality helps you overcome fear is because you're more focused and engulfed in the learning of it instead of you accomplishing something. Right. So like if I could bring you back to my first lesson of karate as a white belt, um, I was already nervous and I was more anxious, but it's like I had no time to even focus on my fear, because right when I bowed on the mat and got into class, everything was new. So I was like, all right, I'm learning how to bow. We have creeds that we repeat in the beginning of class that had no clue. So I'm trying to just think, right? And then, we're moving and so it's like having a white belt mentality is just like, wow, I'm so engulfed into just the focus of, and so focused on just learning, that everything else kind of goes away, right? So it really helps with fear of failure, because it's when we set ourselves up with expectations that we now become fearful of, right? It's like, well, you know, I wasn't in my first white belt class expecting to do a spin and hook kick or jump kick, right? But because had a white belt mentality and I was a white belt, I was just focused on learning. And sometimes when we jump into things in life, um, it can really impact us if we think that we're gonna just jump into something and just all of a sudden become a black belt, become great at it, right? This is just your friendly reminder that every person who's great at something always start as a beginner. So one of the things I learned from all my master instructors is they always embody a white belt mentality. All the top karate instructors I know, and even practitioners, even athletes, and everyone, majority of the greatest always came from a place of learning, and that's another reason of why we should embody a white belt mentality, is to help us overcome the fear. Another concept for embodying white belt mentality is kenai. This is a concept that we always used to say in the karate dojo, which is kenai, which stands for constant and never ending improvement, right? So constant and never ending improvement means that we're focused on growth And having that growth mentality and mindset is so important because it's so easy for us to get stagnant, right? It's easy for us to get stagnant in our relationships. It's easy to get stagnant in our own relationship with ourselves. It's easy to get stagnant in our careers. It's easy to get stagnant in our health, right? So when you are when you have a can I attitude, you realize that the biggest room we have in the world is room for improvement. And it's a concept that I've really it really spread out in all areas of my life, so I think part of one of the nightly routines I do is I spend 5 minutes before bed, like that time between you're falling asleep, or the time between you lay down in your bed and you haven't fallen asleep yet, and there's a few minutes that you have. I typically take that time to just think about how did my day go, and how I look at how I evaluate my day is just by going through it with a non-emotional lens, right? Because the day's over and I can't change anything, but I sure can learn from it. So what I do is I spend literally like a minute or two, and it becomes faster the more you do it. And I just go play back my day, right? It's like, how did I wake up? What type of energy did I have? How was my attitude? How did I interpret things? What things did I do really well? What things that maybe were challenging? And then what things can I improve on? Right. But me just taking a minute or two of just going through my day allows me to constantly be working on my improvements in all areas of my life, because there's sometimes I'm like, damn, I woke up and maybe I could have spent an extra minute hanging out with my son instead of doing something else. Or I could have been more efficient of like preparing, my clothes ready for the next day. And, or it's like, oh, I had this conversation with my family member. Maybe I could express more of how I felt. Or it could be like, I had a conversation with my partner and I realized I felt like some tension. Maybe I could have said something or could have done something different, So I think it's important for us to spend some time daily to focus on reflection. Part of having the can I constant, never ending improvement uh, mentality is taking time for you to reflect. So if you don't have 5 minutes to reflect, you should probably reflect for 30 minutes. And I say that because these taking out time of your day, like reflecting or even planning or setting intentions, I think it's super important for you. And I think it should be a top priority and a high value on your list. But having this routine nightly has really made a big difference because now when I go through my day, I'm like, all right, these are things I could improve on. And then I say, you know what? These are things that I could work on for tomorrow. Now, what that does is that I'm already setting my intentions for the next day of a space where I'm going to be learning and going to be figuring it out. Right. And that's what a white belt is. Being a white belt, when you go to class, you're going to mess things up. You're going to be sloppy at things, but you're going to definitely be learning. And we have a big saying is that a black belt is a white belt who never gave up. And I think it's so important for us to constantly have that white belt mentality. But especially when it comes to constant and never end improvement, I think we can always, if you're listening to this right now, I think there's some areas in your life that you can improve in. And that type of conversation you should be having with yourself daily, right? If you're not daily, weekly, if not weekly, monthly, like start having these conversations with yourself. And that's part of being a white belt, right? It's like, how can I show it better? And and it's no judgment of like, oh, what I've done in the past, maybe not the best. It's not about that. It's about how can you constantly be moving forward in a more of a aligned way, right? So I think it's important, especially how life is always ever changing, ever moving. And I think nothing is ever still, right? So it's like we can try to hold on to good moments and bad moment, or try to let go of bad moments, but life is ebb and flow, right? So there's going to be good days, there's going to be bad days. There's going to be good days, there's going to be bad days. It's the yin and the yang. And I think what I found to really help myself and the people that I'm around is learning how to constantly be willing to learn. I think it's important for us to be in that space, because life can you can't hit the pause button in life. So life, because it's always ever moving, I think we can always be working on something. So if there is an area, you know, what is an area in your life right now that you can improve in? Maybe that's not eating an extra cookie. That's something that I've just been working on because, you know, I like snacks and I can eat, and my lady has snacks too. So I'm now working on, like, only because she has snacks in the house doesn't mean I have to eat them all. You know, I think I'm such an emotional eater that, yeah, yeah. So long story short, those are things that I'm going through, right? It's like, wait, how can I make this day better? Another one was like really learning how to, prepare for my next day. So recently I've really been focused on like the being intentional, but like, all right, this is what I'm gonna wear, this is what I'm gonna do tomorrow, this is how I'm gonna set up my day, and that's really been helping. And it's like day by day. Imagine every day of our lives we would just spend 5 minutes reflecting, and it's like, all right, cool, this is what I went through for today, and this is how I feel like I get better. Right? That's the type of mentality that I think it takes in all areas of life. And I think that's why it takes a certain amount of humility of saying, you know what, I don't know it all. And that's what I think about all the time in my relationships, my career, every area of my life, actually. That's why I'm a big believer of like coaches, mentors, whether it's podcasts, of getting different perspectives. I think it's beautiful to kind of show up to life of like always learning. So I think what we're here on earth is to experience, but also to learn, right? I think we're here to learn and experience. And I think our ability, I think everything that happened, every experience that I go through, for me, I take as a learning lesson. So it's one of those things that, because I have that white belt mentality, everything I go through, good or bad, there's no judgment to it, because all of it's needed, right? I needed the bad relationships to learn to love myself more, right? To figure out what is the relationship I do want. I needed the career that I hated for 6 months, and I gained 40 pounds in 3 months, and I was just fully going through it, right? But I needed that to go to learn, and it's like now, because I've been through experiences and now I'm able to have a certain perspective of constantly learning, I don't really have setbacks that set me back up, right? Because I really truly believe that the more open and willingness I am to learn, the more that I'm only going to get better, right? So if you take an L, turn your L's to not losses, but to learning. And I think that's what we're here for. We're here to learn. So uh I think that's super important for you, for the audience to understand, is how to embody a white belt mentality. If you're listening to this and you're starting anything new, or you're ever going to start anything new, just remember every master starts as a white belt. Remember that the power of curiosity. Remember that the embodying white belt mentality is going to help you overcome the fear of failure. And I think committing to a constant and never ending improvement is is huge. And I think if we embody that to all areas of life, our relationships, our finances, our careers, our friends, our ability of how we show up, I think if we are able to show up that way, we can let go of fear, and but we can also let go of expectation, and just really take the time to do things because we want to experience them and we want to learn. And it helps us not to take things so personal. But it's time for us to really focus in on having a white belt mentality. And I think if we're always, striving for the next step and next level, it just allows us to learn. So I appreciate you guys hopping onto this podcast. Like I said, this one is just short and sweet, straight to the point. It's embodying the white belt mentality. And the reason why I wanted to set this foundation in the podcast, because I think moving forward, everything that we're going to talk about is going to be for constant and never ending growth. And, that's why I'm aspiring to do is, bring as many people into the podcast, not only because you guys can learn their stories, but for me, I love it. I love learning other people's stories, and every story that I learn and every person that we talk to, it's a learning experience. And I think that's why we're all here with all of our beautiful souls, right? We're here with each other at the same time, divinely, for us to all not only experience one each other's energy, but also we're here to learn. And I think I always learn from everyone. You can either be a warning or example, but either way, sheesh, I'm learning, and I uh I pray that after you listen to this podcast, you find time to reflect and find ways to constantly improve in all the areas that are important to you. So you guys already know the deal. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, and share this podcast for someone who needs to hear that embodied white belt mentality is super important. And holding on to that is what allows us to eventually become black belts and masters and things that we do. But it's going to take repetition, repetition, repetition. And it's okay to fail. And it's okay to explore curiosity. So we'll check you guys out. We'll see you next Thursday for next podcast. Next week's guest is going to be fire. So make sure you guys check out that. But like I said, make sure you subscribe, like, and I'll see you guys next week. Os.